Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much. We have a big class tonight of people that signed up. So I'm assuming that people are going to slowly roll in because I think over 90 people registered for this class because guess what? It's 2023 and everybody has New Year intentions, I'm sure, to purchase property this year or maybe next year or start the planning process for it to happen in the next couple of years. And that is great. You're starting at the right place. Realty Collective has been working for, I've had this company now 17 years, and it is all about educating people and supporting them so that they can make the right decisions for themselves. This is not a class, this is not a ploy to try to get you. This is about educating you, introducing ourselves. If you like us, you'll work with us. If you don't, you have somebody else in mind, great. But we're here to educate you and help guide you through this process, and give you as much information so that you're in the right position so that you can make your goals of homeownership a reality. And I can't imagine a better goal for 2023 because we are in as Lisa just said, a buyer's market. So hi, I am Victoria Alexander. I'm the founder of Realty Collective. I started this company 17 years ago to defy the stereotypes associated with real estate brokers. You all know what they are. I'm a matchmaker, a therapist, a coach, a guide to help you become a homeowner here in Brooklyn, or the 5 boroughs, depending on where you are looking. But those are the areas that I cover. What the first thing you need to do is assemble your dream team. And the first phone call you make is to a mortgage professional. And that would be Lisa, to see what your buying power is. And then next would be to find a lawyer after you've had a buyer's broker, which would be me. So your dream team is 3 people: a buyer's broker, a lawyer, and a mortgage professional. I'm going to turn it over to the dream team that I've assembled and that I like working with. That's great for first-time home buyers. And Lisa and Rashida was even my lawyer when I bought my house. These are 3 amazing, 2 amazing women. I am also amazing, but Lisa and Rashida. So Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself? You're the first phone call people should be making.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Lisa. I am a mortgage loan officer. I work at Cross Country Mortgage. I have been doing this for almost 8 years now. I love working with first-time home buyers. I love helping people figure out how to make that huge step into home ownership. And I'm excited to talk to you about the process and answer any questions you have. I primarily work in New York City. I also do deals in the suburbs as well as really all over the country. So I'm licensed everywhere, but New York City is definitely my sort of 90% of my business. And a huge part of it is working with first-time home buyers. So super excited to chat and see how I can help.
Take it away, Rashida.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rashida Sadiq, and I guess we can still say Happy New Year. So this is our first one for our first presentation for the year. My name is Rashida Sadiq. I'm a partner in the law firm of Serpico and Sadiq PC. I have been practicing real estate for going on, actually in April, it will be 20 years officially, representing in those 20 years, many first-time buyers. I'm licensed in both New York and New Jersey. I represent clients in all of the boroughs, additionally also Nassau, Suffolk County, Westchester, and parts of Rochester. So I'm here to hopefully give you guys some insight on, as a first-time buyer, some things that terms you should be looking, you should know, just, what you should be asking your attorney through the process, because purchasing at any market can be overwhelming, and you want to make sure that you have the right, the right information going into that. So look forward to giving you some information, and good year.
Thank you, ladies. So the third person you need is your buyer's broker, which would be me. I have 19, 20 years of experience now in the Brooklyn real estate market to guide you through this process. With my expert advice, I've purchased my own home. Now I've also purchased a property upstate and some in the Bronx. So I've been doing this a long time for myself and helping other people through both buying and selling through that time. My job is to really, like I said, coach you through this emotional roller coaster, especially the first property that you ever buy is really a whirlwind. And so protecting you from yourself, because you might negotiate for a living, but you can get in your own way. You can over negotiate a deal. You can put too many clauses or ask too much or overstep or offend somebody because you are unaware of what you're doing. And that is why working with somebody to help you through this process is super important, to help not make those missteps that could possibly lose you your dream home. You want to be the person that actually wins the bid, and then it gets to actually close and move into the place that you fall in love with. And we work with you to make sure that that happens in every possible scenario that we can. So now you have these three people. You have a buyer's agent, an attorney, and a mortgage professional. Since, like I said before, it's extremely important to have a buyer's agent because they have a fiduciary responsibility to you, just like your mortgage broker, mortgage professional, and your lawyer. Interview these people. You want to feel comfortable with them. Ask them a lot of questions as a job. You want to interview them for the job and make sure that they're right for you. Please do not hire your uncle just because they're a lawyer in New York and they're going to give you a discount. You want expert advice in people working in the real estate specific world, with industry relationships that can guide you through this process. So first question, why buy now? One, we're in a buyer's market. Rent is too damn high. Rental market still very strong right now. Rents are crazy. The renters I'm working with or talking to are telling me the crazy numbers that are being asked of them for these minuscule spaces. I'm sure a lot of you are feeling the same. You get to have your own design, you get long-term investment, you're building equity. And even though interest rates are really high right now, you are not married to an interest rate. You are married to a property. You can always refinance. And Lisa will talk about some other strategies to overcome the interest rates that we're dealing with right now. We have something that we use called the rent versus buy matrix. It's a New York Times link that you can put in some numbers and figure out if buying in New York City is right for you. If you are not staying in New York for the next 5 years, purchasing is probably not your next step. Probably staying renting. And if you're going to leave and move to another city, then renting makes sense for you right now, unless you plan on ever coming back to New York in the future. You want to always have a base here and move around, then purchasing might be for you. So now your team is assembled and you've decided that buying is for you after you've done the rent versus buy matrix. Besides the three big team members that you need, you also might need an inspector, a contractor, maybe an architect, and we can recommend those people for you. We have 2 decades now of relationships to help you make sure you have all the team members you need to make an educated decision about a property. So now that your team is assembled, you're ready to move forward. Financing. This is where you start, not on Street Easy. Everybody wants to just go on Street Easy and Zillow. And what I like to tell them that they're doing is looking at real estate porn. That is not where you start your search. You start your search by figuring out what your buying power is and what you can get a bank will pre-approve you for. So your first phone call is to Lisa. And that's an important phone call to make, especially if you are self-employed. So if you are self-employed, before you file taxes this year, you want to make sure you're filing your taxes so that you look great to a bank. As a small business owner myself, I know that in years past and why I had to have my parents co-sign my loan when I bought my house, and they're still on my loan, even though, they have no financial bearing on the loan or the property. Their name is on the loan because I own my own business and I write everything off. And there are challenges to that. And Lisa will talk to you specifically if you do own your own business or work on 1099, how to overcome that. So Lisa, do you want to talk about some of these financing things?
Absolutely. So it is super important that you talk with the mortgage professional first. And the reason is because how much you can get pre-approved for a loan is a huge determining factor in what you're going to buy, right? So if you're looking at places or talking to Victoria before you really know what your buying power is from the mortgage standpoint, you're really doing yourself a disservice. You're either looking at things way over your budget, which is not really fun, or you might be undercutting what you actually could get pre-approved for and expand your possibilities if you desire to do so. So the first sort of important thing about the pre-approval process is it's actually really personal. I'm going to ask you questions about your job, about what you're looking to buy. Is this going to be your forever home? Is this a stepping stone and something that you might sell in less than 10 years? What are you doing for a down payment? Is it coming as a gift? Is it in your savings account? Is there some other source of funding that the down payment is going to come from? And also, what do you think you want to buy? Co-ops have specific rules in terms of getting co-op approval that you need to make sure your loan is properly structured for, so that you don't have any issues along the way. There's a whole bunch of different options available in terms of loan products. One thing that's really cool about us is that I'm a correspondent lender, so I have about 100 different products to figure out the right one for you, rather than just sticking to you into like my 130-year product. FHA is a very good option if you're going to buy a multifamily or a single family, because you can put as little as 3.5% down. There's also 203K loans, which is a much more lengthy, bigger process, but that's for like a gut rehab situation. And it's typically not a great move for a first-time home buyer, because it is a big process actually funding the rehab project, but it is something we can talk about and sort of guide you through the steps if that's something you want to do. And then there's also, we have a special first-time home buyers program, which is pretty awesome. If you meet the income limitations, then you actually get 3% off of the purchase price that could be used for down payment assistance, for closing costs, or to buy down the rate. So this is so really helpful, because I think a lot of you are probably have the income to qualify, but maybe don't have all the funds needed for the kind of place you want to buy. So a down payment assistance program is a really good fit for first-time home buyers. In terms of self-employed borrowers, 100% self-employed borrowers can get a loan. 100%, I need to see your tax returns, and I want to see a draft of your tax returns before you file it this year. That is because if it's a draft, I can work with your accountant and we can sort of tweak the numbers a little bit to help you qualify for the kind of loan you want. Once it's filed, you can't touch it. That is your income for the year if you're self-employed. So if you're self-employed, it's super important to talk to a mortgage professional before you file your taxes this year. And generally, to get a loan if you're self-employed, you have to have been in a business or in that industry for 2 years. The last thing I wanted to talk about, self-employed, is obviously rate, because that's a big topic right now. So the good news is rates are actually starting to go down. So rates right now are actually significant better than 6 months ago, which is great. What I've been telling all of my clients is the rate you get that right now when you're buying this home is not going to be the rate you have for 30 years. It's probably not going to be the rate you have for 2 years, because once the recession is in full swing, rates are going to go down. And then we're going to talk about refinancing you. So the rate that you have for this transaction is really how to think about it, is it's the rate that gets you the apartment. The cool thing about what's going on in the market right now versus 3 years ago when rates were ridiculously low is that half of my clients that I have now were people who looked 2 or 3 years ago and couldn't buy a place. Couldn't get, because everybody wanted to buy because rates were so low. They couldn't get an accepted offer. They couldn't, they just couldn't get their foot in the door. And now they're actually getting accepted offers on good places with a reasonable offering price. And it's because of what's going on with the market. So that's sort of my spiel on getting pre-approved. The last thing I'll just say is that the pre-approval is really a working draft. So as you start to see things with Victoria, we will tweak that pre-approval based on, whether you end up going for a condo or a co-op, or maybe you increase your purchase price. It's really a fluid document that can change as you sort of get a better idea of what you really want.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Just like I said about the lawyers, but same thing here is like, it's super important that you're hiring somebody that's New York City specific for your mortgage professional. You do not want to be using Quicken or Rocket Mortgage. These online platforms just do not understand co-ops. You're not usually dealing with like a person that understands the turn times and application process, and then getting the commitment letter in for a co-op application. Just co-ops are very specific to New York, and these platforms don't understand it at all. You're just not having co-ops in like California or in the middle of the country. So just making sure you're working with a New York City expert. It's really, really important that somebody understands the New York City housing market and these different types of products that are available for New York City. Farah's going to send up some links about applying and underwriting and loans and what you're available for. So now that you've got your pre-approval down and you understand what your buying power is and you've got your taxes filed and everything's going great, you're figuring out what your buying strategy is, what your timeline is, how long you're going to live there. Is this a place you're going to start a family? Is school district important to you? Does your commute matter? Are you working from home now, but that in the future you're going to need to be accessing the city and commuting more? Or is this a more permanent thing that you need to make sure you're always going to be able to commute and always be by train lines because you work in city government or something? What do you have a lease right now? And is your lease expiring? And is that putting pressure on your timing? Does that take new construction off the plate for you because you can't buy in a project that you don't know when it's going to be done? Because that's a concern with new construction that you have to consider. Closing costs are higher with new construction too, but now since there's so much buyer leverage, right, because of interest rates, you can negotiate a lot of those costs that you would, which are access costs normally for new construction, that you can get the developer to pay a lot of these things that you wouldn't be able to, 2 years ago when the interest rates were so low. This was just highly competitive, and the developers could leverage that against you. So you'd be paying for their lawyer, that you'd be paying for all the transfer taxes. You just wouldn't be getting a lot of concessions. And right now we're doing is getting a lot of concessions in new construction for our buyers. So if there's a project that you're interested in, the only thing is can't buy new construction if you're like, I have to move in 6 months, because that project might not be, you might not be able to move into it in 6 months, and knowing what the pros and cons of that are and working with your team. So finding your dream home, which I think I go over the different types of housing. So types of homes, apartments, right? Apartments come in condo or co-ops. Understanding the amenities that are associated with these kinds of buildings, new construction versus an older pre-war building that's been converted, doorman versus elevator or walk-up. Do you want pre-war details? Understanding which neighborhoods have the kind of building typologies that you're looking for. If you want to be in a pre-war doorman building, you're probably not looking in Williamsburg. Probably looking in Brooklyn Heights, Prospect Heights, Park Slope. Those are where you can get those types of buildings. If you want new construction, downtown Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Greenpoint, maybe Bushwick a little bit, depending on if you're okay with being off the L train. So thinking about neighborhood, what you want to feel like when you walk outside your door, and what kind of building typology is that in those neighborhoods, and then making your list of 5 deal breakers. I say, tell everybody to make a list of 5 deal breakers, and then tell them that you're probably only gonna get 2 or 3 of them. Because that is the reality of living in New York City. So if you're like, I need 5 closets, how many places have 5 closets? You can actually find pre-war co-ops that have 5 closets. But if you're not down for a pre-war co-op in Prospect Heights, probably not going to become a reality. And then understanding what your closing costs are going to be. If you cannot afford 20% down plus your closing costs for co-ops, which is 1 to 3%, or 3 to 5% for condos, and then if that's not a reality to you, then either you need to change your purchase price and account for that part of the down payment you allocated for goes to closing costs, or save more until you're ready to reach those numbers to get what you want. That's why new construction, also on top of that, there's a lot of fees for brand new construction, like the transfer taxes. But in this market, you have a lot of leverage to have those barriers of access aren't as hard. So thinking about how you can negotiate it, Rashida, are people negotiating their closing costs into purchases for new construction these days? Are we back there yet? Because that was something that I did when I bought my house.
So I'm not seeing as much new construction movement, but we are seeing some things where we like seller's concession, where you can it says that the seller is giving you a credit towards your closing costs, but depends on if you're actually increasing the price to account for that concession, so you can roll in your closing costs. This may be a little bit too too in detail, but there is a seller's concessions where you can increase the purchase price so that you can roll in your closing costs into your mortgage. And I'm seeing that a little bit more where sellers are willing to do that, so that buyers can afford the property and also get their closing costs.
We have a whole amazing video where you go over the difference that we will send to people. So we can go into detail once you guys are ready for that. But it's one of the nice benefits of being in a buyer's market right now is that you have leverage to ask for these things. So if you don't have all of your down payment or want to, or don't want to allocate a huge amount of your down payment money to your closing costs, if you're buying in condo or new construction, this is one of the strategies you can use if you don't have competition on the property that you're looking at. So where do you search? Next slide. The internet has changed everything. So almost everything, if you're looking in Manhattan, most of Brooklyn, Queens, everything is on the internet. Brokers are not representing their clients well if they're not putting properties on the internet. So, and those brokers then are probably not getting listings because they're not getting the exposure that the clients need to get the highest and best value for their property. So the internet has changed everything, and most properties are on the internet. Unless you're out looking in like Canarsie, there might be some small mom and pop brokers out there that are not putting their properties out there for everybody to find. You're going to find everything there. If you want to find something that's not on the market, there are strategies to do that. That's a whole other class. So everything is very transparent now. And that's why, and REBNY, the Real Estate Board of New York, has helped that become a reality. The days of off-market listings and pocket listings are mostly unheard of. And REBNY developed its own platform that got launched this year for listings, so that everything that is coming into the database is being disseminated to all the brokers. So we have all the access to all the information. I would say that StreetEasy is still my most user-friendly public platform for people. So you're looking in the right place. Zillow owns StreetEasy, but Zillow has a lot of dead listings, in my opinion. I don't know where everybody else is listening. You can put in your chat what'd you say? You can tell us where you're looking. No, realtor.com. I feel like people are using.
I'll also say Zillow does a really, really bad habit of listing co-ops as condos.
Yeah.
Or condo, like just conflating them, which is not really great. So that's sort of a negative of it from New York City.
I agree with that. But we have a backend database that will help aggregate all those sites so that you're getting listings aggregated to you through our backend platform. You just won't have access to that if you're not working with a broker. And then keep in mind, we're looking at listings online. You'll see sellers, agents info, that if you reach out to somebody on those listings, that you're reaching out to the broker, either that represents the seller, who is, and now they have, their best interest of the seller, or someone that has paid to have their name on somebody else's listing that's fishing for clients. No matter what broker you choose, if it is not me, that is okay. You want to make an educated choice about who is guiding you through this process. Do not let paid advertising pick somebody for you. Make a conscious decision about your representation and who you want to work with. You're going to be spending a lot of time with this person, and you want to feel like you could take advice from them, that you trust them, and that they're looking out for your best interests, and that they're making time for you. They're talking you through all of these issues and challenges and your self-doubts about, doing this and each property. And at each step of the way, like I said, emotional roller coaster. Be prepared. And has the best interest of the buyer. I don't know how to. The buyer's broker represents you. And make sure you're asking the right questions to make sure you're developing a competitive market strategy and offer strategy with your broker, because that's one of the jobs that your broker is doing for you. And I think Farah just shared it. We have a condo versus co-op personality quiz. So making an offer and negotiating. It is so important that when I send you the paperwork to get you ready to put in an offer, even if it is day one that we're going out to look on things, it doesn't matter if it's day one. Your dream property might be on the market day one. And then you will be scrambling to compete against the people that have been in the market for the last 2 months, that have all of their paperwork, their pre-approval letter, their submit offer letter, their cover letter, all ready to go, and you don't. So when I send you a link to start working on these things, even if it's not 100% done, as long as you've made the effort to at least review it and understand what is expected of you and start this, that is going to prepare you so that at the first day out, if you do see the property that we're not going out without a pre-approval letter. That's, no broker wants you to come to their open house unless you've been pre-approved. And most of them will ask to see a copy of it. Being the first offer and showing your seriousness and confidence really has an emotional and psychological impact on sellers. So that's another reason to make sure that if you've found your dream apartment on the first day out, getting your offer in first is so important, and not be like, oh, we're scrambling to get all our paperwork together and now there's 5 other offers and you don't have the same opportunity to, even if it's a higher number, to leave the same impact on the seller. One of the main resources that working with the buyer's agent is their relationship and knowledge with other agents, and repeat deals together. An understanding of the seller agent's strategy and temperament can give you a real competitive edge and advantage. So there's brokers that I've worked with for the last 15 years. We have relationships, do deals together all the time. They're like, oh, Victoria's an offer in, and pick Victoria. We know what it's like to work with Victoria. We know she's like this. This is how she's going to get the deal done. And I'm also a pretty straight shooter. They know that, like, I'm not going to dick them around, say nicely. And you want to have a negotiation strategy with your agent to create and devise how you're going to approach making sure you're the winning bid if this is your dream home. We like to categorize things into like A, B, and C properties for you. It's like A is like, you want it. This is it, your dream place. B is like, if it was at this price, I would take it. And C is like, if they came back to me at this lowball number, maybe. And then everything needs to be negotiated before you accept the offer. When I send Rashida the deal sheet has everything already outlined there. They're just putting into the contract. So how much money down? How many days till closing? Is it contingent on financing? Is it contingent on an inspection? Is there some other clauses or what appliances are included or excluded, or light fixtures that the seller wants to keep? So making sure that all of the terms are written down in your deal sheet and negotiate before the deal sheets go to the lawyers. So now, and then inspection too, making sure we get our inspection done. So the deal sheets are out and they go to the lawyers, passing it to Rashida first and then Lisa.
So I normally say I'm the last one on the list of things. So you've been pre-approved by Lisa. Victoria has negotiated the terms of your offer, which was accepted, and a deal sheet, which is, as Victoria just mentioned, is a summary of that accepted offer, and that goes out to the attorneys. So in New York, until the contract is signed by both parties, you are not in contract, and there's things that happen that you need to do before you are in contract. And things can change before you are in contract. So even those terms that were negotiated, those may change depending on what happens between when that deal sheet goes out and by the time you go into contract. Some of the things that the main thing in New York that you always want to do is do an inspection, regardless of the type of property, whether it's a co-op, a condo, a house, you want to do an inspection. An inspection is done prior to you signing the contract, because there's a term in the contract that says you're purchasing the property in as-is condition, and that you've either waived your inspection or you've done your inspection and you understand the condition. So that's extremely very important that you do that inspection. If something comes up in the inspection, this is an opportunity for your agent, for your attorney to go over it with you, and they go back to the seller and said, hey, the boiler, is not working, or it's a co-op and there's a leak. So these type of things, you can go back and say, well, I didn't know about this when I put in my offer. This needs to be fixed. These repairs have to happen prior to your closing. So that's why I say that things can happen and change your offer terms prior to you signing the contract. And that's important why you do your inspection. Also, part of before you go into contract and part of your offer is finding out what your contingencies are. Standard, if you're getting a mortgage, you're going to have a mortgage contingency in there. You've been pre-approved, so you definitely want to make sure that you have that contingency unless you're doing an all-cash transaction. That's one of the main contingencies in your contract. If you're buying a co-op or a condo, your attorney has to do what we call as due diligence. You love the property. I always tell clients, it's like you love the property, you physically see it. However, you're buying into an association or you're buying into a corporation, and you want to know, what am I buying into what's financially happening? Is there history of maintenance increases? Are there upcoming assessments? Is there litigation? What's the pet policy? What's the sublet policy? What's the application? All of these things you get after your offer has been accepted, but your attorney finds out during that due diligence period. And if something comes up in that due diligence period that you say, wait, they've been doing assessments for the last 5 years, and there's been a 10% increase for the last 5 years as well. Hey, I didn't know that there's potentially going to be another 10% increase next year. So maybe I want to go back and negotiate the terms, or maybe this isn't a property for you. Maybe there's some red flags. So all of this happens between, once again, after your offer is accepted, prior to you signing the contract. And that due diligence, you want to make sure that your attorney does, especially if you're buying a co-op and a condo, that due diligence happens. If you're looking at a house, there's no due diligence. As an attorney, I do like to look up the property to see if there's a certificate of occupancy, see if there's any violation, so I can do a quick search on the property. Once you get into contract, a title company does an official search, but those are things that that happens prior to you signing the contract, whether it's a co-op, a condo, or a house. Your attorney should also go over your closing costs with you prior to you signing, and speak with your lender may have give you some preliminary numbers. Your attorney can go over that with you based on the type of property. From the co-op end, if there's any co-op fees that you need to be aware of, that's part of the application. So your attorney will find that out during the due diligence. Once that due diligence is completed, once your inspection is completed, now you're ready to sign the contract. Your attorney will meet with you and go over the specific terms in that contract of sale, such as mortgage contingency time period, title, and things like that. I think the next slide goes into that. But I'll say when I'm speaking to first-time buyers, main things are understanding your contingencies, and then we're going to talk about understanding your timeframes when you're in contract and things that have to happen once you're in contract.
Lisa, do you have anything to add before we're in contract?
Yeah, I'll just take it away once we're in contract. That's sort of when I come back into it.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Okay, so now Rashida has done an amazing job. You are now have fully executed contracts. And this part of the process is when working with a team who works together a lot really, really is important. Because as Victoria is making the offer, she's talking to me about the pre-approval to make sure to make the strongest offer she can that protects you and gets you the place. As Rashida is doing due diligence, she might call me and say, hey, I found this in the co-op board's minutes. Is this going to be an issue? All of that is super important because from a lender's perspective, very few problems do I find unsolvable. It's all about finding them out early so that we can plan appropriately. So once you have fully executed contracts, this is not a surprise to me because we have been in conversation all the time, which is super important. Then it becomes what's called a live deal. So I have updated documents from you. I have everything ready to make the loan application. I send it over to my team. You get initial disclosures to e-sign and the appraisal gets ordered. And then the next steps of the process are really to work with my team or the team, which my processor is named Danielle. She's amazing. And her job is to work with you to make sure if there's anything we think the underwriter is going to need, we get on top of it. Once we have a full file and the appraisal's back, we get it into underwriting and you get what's called a mortgage commitment. And the mortgage commitment is basically a stamp from the bank that says, yep, this loan looks good, we're ready to do it. And it'll have a few conditions like homeowners insurance. When you buy a property, you have to pay your homeowners insurance for the first year and like a few other things. And this, I think what makes me and my team really shine is how quickly we get you that mortgage commitment, which is really, really important. Because if you are buying a condo or a house, maybe you locked up front, which means that we have to close before that lock expires, or else you have to pay extension fees, which get really expensive really fast. So the faster you get the mortgage commitment, the faster you're going to get ready to close. If you're buying a co-op, the co-op will not let you schedule your board interview until they have the mortgage commitment. And the faster you get it, the better, because Victoria and her team do an awesome job of preparing the application so that they will have everything ready. So as soon as that commitment is there, we pop it in the file and we get it over the co-op board. Why is that important? Because some co-op boards say, awesome, this looks great, come in tomorrow for the interview. Some co-op boards say, you know what, our next appointment for interviews is 3 months from now. There is nothing you can do. You just have, the co-op board really gets to decide when they are going to look at your application and when they are going to do the interview. So it's really, really important that you have the mortgage commitment as quickly as possible just to ease the process, as well as to know that, you know, there's no problems here. This is working great and we are one step closer to getting closed.
I think next slide, and then so you're in contract. So we've done the inspection. Rashida and Lisa signed off on everything, and you signed the contract. Now the heavy lifting is doing the bank. So you guys, the buyers, now have to make sure all of your documents get to Lisa, because it is so important that you get your commitment letter, especially with the co-op. If you're doing a co-op package, we will work with you to assemble a beautiful package. It is on you to make sure you get all of your up-to-date documents. And if then, while we're waiting, first you get everything in the bank. They get eat first. I always say bank eats first. Then once the bank has everything, then you can start assembling your co-op package. Everybody likes to do the co-op package because it's like organized in some sort of template that they can fill in and they feel like they have control over. The bank eats first. Make sure the bank has everything, because you cannot submit your co-op application until you have your commitment letter. That's again comes into working with local industry experts so that their turn times are really short. They've already reviewed the building. They've gone over the questionnaire to make sure that the building's qualified and you're not going to have any problems getting your loan and getting your commitment letter, so that you can get your application in. And then the management company, and we've talked to the management company so that we know, hey, after we give you the application, how long till we get an interview? How long does it take? Some management companies turn it right over to the board. Okay, so I could go into a little bit more about how co-ops work, but usually they're self-managed or have a management company. The larger management companies, if they have a full plate, say, hey, we take 10 business days to review the application before we send it to the co-op board, which is the in-building representation, people that live in the building, because management companies can represent multiple buildings, and they usually do. And then they can schedule, once they say, hey, we've reviewed everything after 10 business days, then we can start working on scheduling the co-op board interview, after everybody on our co-op board has also started reviewing the paperwork. So understanding like what the timeline is super important, so that you can set your expectations and not be like, oh, well, we want to close. Oh, but if your commitment's going to expire and we haven't even done the interview yet, or your rate's going to expire, and that's understanding when to lock. That's why you need to have 3 people that are communicating with each other, understanding all the different pieces that are playing out, so that we're not making any missteps of locking your rate too early, not locking your rate at all, and things changing pretty dramatically. Not understanding the turn times on the management company or the co-op application, or what the new construction condo project and when it's actually going to be delivered to you, and how many apartments are actually in contract already, so that you can start closing. These are like very specific deal-oriented information that only experts are going to help you not get trapped by these missteps if they know what they are doing. So making sure, like I said, interview people, feel confident that they are seasoned experts that've been in the industry for a really long time, and they are going to advise you to make sure that you don't put yourself in a precarious situation where you're paying rent and a mortgage because whatever, that you're homeless, that you have to move into storage, that you have to move in with your parents, that you didn't lock your rate or you locked your rate and now rates have changed and you're paying to extend, but they've gone down. And so you're, like there's so many moving parts and things that you can do to put yourself in a position to not advocate for yourself. And that's why you need advocates. You need expert advocates to help you through this, because you're not expected to know everything. We have the information so you can learn as much as you want, but it is on your experts to help advise you through this process. You just can't know everything without doing it. At least you've never done this before. You're first time home buyer. You're not expected to know everything. So you get to the closing after you've gotten your application in, everything's been accepted. The bank gives you the clear to close. It does not matter if the co-op board has approved you. The bank needs to give you the clear to close. And then once you have that, that is when the lawyers, Rashida and whoever is representing the sellers, can start coordinating with the bank when the closing is. Nothing's going to happen until the bank gives you the clear to close. And the lawyers then are Rashida likes to call herself the juggler. Rashida, you want to take it away about scheduling the closing?
Well, I want to actually go back a little bit to the previous about when you're in contract. So we can just talk a little bit about the time frames. So as Victoria had mentioned and Lisa had mentioned about the specific timeframes that when you're in contract. So a standard contract will have your mortgage contingency in there, and you typically have 30 to 45 days from when you get into contract to get your mortgage. If you're not able to get your mortgage during that time period, if there's an issue with the co-op or the condo building or the appraisal, all of that happens during that 30 to 45 day time period. And if you're not able to get the mortgage or you get denied during that time period, you have a right to get the return of your deposit. Simultaneously to that, the other time period that you're working with when you're in contract is your closing date. For a standard transaction, your closing date will be on or about 60 days. If you're looking at a house or a condo, that's typically fine. If you're looking at a co-op, it's probably going to be more around a 90-day process. The reason for a co-op is different is because that first time period of getting you your mortgage, of that 30 to 45 days, you need that before, as Victoria had mentioned, in order to submit your application to the board, which is another 2 or 3 weeks, wait for your interview, approval, clearance to close, and then scheduling. So that's why for a co-op, you're looking at probably a 90-day process, sometimes more depending on the building. For a house and a condo, you're looking at a 60-day process, even though condos still may have an application process. It calls a condo waiver. Some condos do take some time. They can take, 30 days on some of the bigger buildings. But I just want everyone to understand the time periods, because that's one of the main things as a first-time buyer you should be aware of, the various moving parts. In New York, it's an on or about time period, so it's not set in stone. Other states, it's on or before, or so you think, hey, it's going to be on that particular date. In New York, as I said, there's multiple moving parts that happen during that time period. So we've had your contingency of your attorneys work in the background. Your attorney's done what we call is lien search, title search, to make sure that there's no judgments, violations, no issues with the property. So you're getting good title to the property. The seller is paying off any open mortgages. All of that is taken care of during that 60-day time period in the contract of sale. Once that's okay, you got good title, you've been approved by the board. If you're buying a co-op, the condo has issued the waiver of the right of first refusal. If you're buying a condo, and now your bank has done everything they need on their end, so they've issued you that clearance to close. Now we can schedule that closing date. And your attorney is the one that's going to be coordinated with all the parties to schedule that. So they're going to be working with Lisa, working with your loan officer, working with a bank attorney, because bank attorney is also signed to the file, working with the title company if it's a house or a condo, to make sure that everyone's available on a specific date and a specific time to get you involved on that closing. Prior to the closing, your attorney will send out a confirmation email to everyone you close, letting your agent know to schedule the walkthrough. And now you're scheduling your walkthrough, goes back to that provision in the contract and your inspection where it says everything is in as-is condition. You're going to make sure that nothing has changed from when you saw the property. The utilities are on, the lights are still working, there's no leaks. And they didn't damage anything through the move. That's the purpose of your walkthrough. And your contract typically provides that you do it within 24 to 48 hours prior to the closing. And the reason it has that is that if something comes up during that walkthrough, there's enough time to find out if there's credits or repairs that have to be done, escrows, enough time for your attorney to get the information, your agent to get the information, maybe a person in there to repair these things before you get to the closing. The closing is typically scheduled. It's an hour to 2 hours of you signing the documents after 60 days have been passed. And that's really kind of a big overview of it's a lot to take in the 1 hour time period, but you're getting there within 30 to 60 days goes by pretty quickly, just as an hour goes by pretty quickly as well when you get information.
Thank you, Rashida. We do something called the final walkthrough 24 hours before, 24 to 48 hours before the closing, where we make sure everything looks good and that anything that needed to be repaired is done. And then at the closing, you get your keys. Do not, everybody, and Lisa and Rashida will agree with me on this, do not schedule your move. Whatever you do, you're not allowed to schedule your move until you know that you are actually going to the closing table and the closing has happened, because everybody puts all this pressure on moving the afternoon of their closing or the next day. And then if something happens where they need to delay 24 hours, it's so anxiety and stress producing for everybody involved. You just have to wait and be patient. I know that you feel like we're at the finish line. We're so close to be there. And then that's it. Lisa, anything to add before I wrap everything up?
No, I just sent a little message. Someone asked about corporate properties, and I'm going to follow up. But one thing I just want to say to the whole group, and I think she might mean commercial properties, but that's a very different beast from residential. So what we've been talking about today is a residential mortgage, a residential process of purchase, which the commercial is definitely different, specifically on the mortgage end. But yeah, besides that, I think you're gonna have a lot of questions. I always say that, buying New York's real estate is like being in the military, like a Marine, the few, the proud, the strong. But you can do it, and you just need to sort of have realistic expectations and really have a team that knows what they're doing, and just listen to them, because this is not our first rodeo. We know how to get you to the closing table, and then you'll have a place.
And it's the best investment in yourself if you plan on staying in New York. So, if you are a lifer or even are going to be here for 5 years, buying property in New York City is the best thing you can do to overcome rents, getting, and having control over your future. I bought my house, I was telling these ladies as we started, 13 years ago. And thank goodness somebody in my office, another agent, was my agent, because we all need experts. We all need that sounding board, that advice from somebody else to help us, guide us to make these huge life decisions. Convinced me to buy my house, because I was talking myself out of purchasing this house because I wanted some other property because it had 3 bedrooms and wanted more space. Thank God she got me to be reasonable. There's no way my mortgage is half of what I would pay in rent right now. Yes, homeownership is not always fun. I had to buy a new dryer today. And my dryer is 12 years old and making a whole bunch of sound. There's always something that I have to deal with. But I get to stay in New York and make my own space, not be pushed out, and build equity. I'm going to be able to sell my house for a lot more than I paid for it. and, be paying half of what everybody else is, down the line. So the number might seem high now, but if you're in New York long enough, that number is not going to be that high in the future. So do yourself a favor and invest in and figure out how to make this investment in yourself. If you really plan on staying in New York, I tell everybody, if it's within your means, do this one thing. There's lots of ways to invest your finances and in your future, but this is the one that actually has a huge impact on your quality of life if you want to live in New York. So that's my pitch for definitely buy something, definitely work with us and to help guide you through this process. We have tons of resources for you. I have a library of resources I've built on Basecamp that guide you step by step through each step of the process so that you are educated every step of the way. There's going to be tons of nights at 4 a.m. where you wake up going, oh my God, I don't know anything about 203K loans or tax abatements or the sublet agreement in my building. Like, what are these? We have made all of these resources available and written about them concisely so that you understand, not in a bunch of industry jargon that's accessible to you through our platform. You will then have access to RealtyMX, which is our backend database to get your listings. You'll get a copy of this recording after this class. You'll get a copy of our homebuyer ebook that sort of is the Bible of everything that is on Basecamp, but this is just beginning to end of the basics you need to know, not topic specific, broken up like the Basecamp. And then, if you have further questions, call any of us, schedule a time. I'm going to send out some links where you can go into Calendly and schedule times with us to talk about your specific situation. Everybody is different and some people need 6 months, some people need 6 years, but there is never, you should start planning now to make this dream a reality for yourself. And I'm happy to work with you as long as it takes to get you there. I'm opening it for questions, and there's one here, and I think there's a larger question, but do you recommend buying rental properties in Brooklyn? Is it worth the investment given that rent is very high, but home prices are also very high? I'm here on visa, not sure if I'll stay in New York City in the US next 5 years, but I want to build equity. I think it's a lot more ambitious and it's a lot harder if you're not going to be here to own a whole building. I would say if you're planning on leaving, it's easier to manage a condo because it's self-sufficient and there's not like a roof and all these things that can go wrong with it. Being a landlord is a job. And if you don't have the bandwidth to have another job, you shouldn't probably buy a property that has rental units in it. It might seem like a good investment, but really it does take a certain person that has the resources and expertise to do this. I wouldn't say if you've never owned property or don't know how building mechanics work, that this is something you should jump into. There's a lot of other competition for this as well, especially in this market, the people that have cash right now that are buying. So I would say that this is something that lead to the landlords and just buy something for yourself and invest in yourself.
And I would just add on to that like if you bought a condo for yourself and you end up moving, as long as you pick the right building and the right condo, then you could potentially rent that out while you're gone as an investment property. And that's a very smart move to go and a smart way to get your feet wet. That's personally what I did. I wanted to buy an investment property and I got a condo to sort of get my feet wet. And I'm really glad I did because it's been great, but I definitely would not have been able to handle a whole building, but a condo is very, very manageable and gives you an idea of sort of, the whole landlord situation and if that's going to work right for you.
Great, because you need to have your list of experts, like your plumber, all these people that you need to help make sure to maintain the property if you're not going to be there to do it. And it's harder to do from afar.
I'll just say, just as a legal standpoint, landlord tenant in New York is very tenant friendly. So if you are planning on being a landlord, definitely want to know what the laws are and how to protect yourself when you're going into a lease, if you have multiple tenants and things like that, because it's not for the weak of heart. Other states, you can start a process with a tenant that doesn't, pretty quickly, but in New York, it can be very costly and timely. But as Lisa and Victoria has said, condos are probably the better one if you're looking at something, because a condo typically does not have a restriction on subletting. versus a co-op, you will have, some buildings do have restrictions on the time. You know, if you're able to buy it as investment or sub.
Rashida, you're breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure if that's you or me, but I'm breaking up. Farah, is it her or me? So jumping back in, so somebody's asking, do all cash offers include no financing, or are people getting tricky behind the scenes with those offers? So what people can do is waive their financing contingency. So when you're making an offer and you have a pre-approval letter because you're getting financing, you have a financing contingency. So if the bank decides not to give you the loan, you're not losing your deposit. What all cash offers can do is say they're waiving their financing contingency, and that if they can get a loan, great, but if not, they're going to use all their cash, and they've proven that they have the cash. Some people don't want to use all their cash and would rather get financing, but only a way for a seller to accept that would be if they disclose that, hey, we're going to use financing, we'll do an all cash deal if we have to, but we want the time to actually get a loan. So that's when there is financing happening with all cash offers that are being here. If they have to use all their cash, they're going to have to. But if I was them, I'd probably want to get financing so I didn't have to tie up all my cash in a property. Does that answer your question, Darren? Any other questions? Changing the view here. Oh, Rashida's back. Good. Any other questions before we end? And Darren says, yes, thank you. I think we're just going to wrap everything up. If you guys have any other questions for any of us specifically, just go ahead and reach out. Like I said, after this, you'll have access to all of our resources, and we look forward to talking to you more about your goals, whether it's this year or in the future, about buying your first piece of property. Thank you all for your time, and Happy New Year. Oh, wait, how much credit score actually impact interest rates? How much does
I mean, it's a little specific to the actual deal, but credit scores do affect your rate. But over, an 800 credit score, it's not like having 805 or 800 is going to make a difference in your rate. It's really a category of like high 7s to 8, mid 7s, low 7s, etc. But your credit score is what your credit score is. So one of the things we'll have a conversation about is, if you're buying now, what your credit score is, and if your credit score is low, but you're looking to buy in a year or two, maybe what we can do to assist in getting that credit score up. But feel free to reach out to me if you need more questions. And yeah, I think I'm about ready to head out and deal with my kids, but super fun, you guys, and really excited to see how we might be able to help.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you all soon, hopefully. Take care.
Bye.